Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 3M Open Data Dive Show. Per usual on a Monday night, we are going to take our first look at the forecast for Blaine, Minnesota. See how the wind and the weather is going to affect the tournament, where we'll take a deep dive into the statistics that generally play well at TPC Twin Cities, figure out the players in the field that have been best at those metrics and who we think are going to excel at those statistics. And at the end of the show, I will show you all the research that led to what I posted regarding the past champions and the players in the field this week fit those patterns. So we got a lot to get into. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where, as I just alluded to, I posted some research regarding the past champions of the 3M Open, what patterns those were, and the players in the field this week who also fit those patterns. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contests I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. If you want to see the players I'm wagering and the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a fantastic article called The Fringe. Can't recommend it enough. He is on vacation this week, so no article, but normally he writes a fantastic article and then updates you throughout the week with his own version of recent form course history. And by subscribing to his article, you'll get his deluxe version, which has the projected ownerships, his top plays, values, and all that. You really are missing out if you aren't subscribed. And make sure you're following him over on social media, because that is where we put our detailed descriptions and detailed write-ups for the 2025 Picks Challenge. I had a 1-point lead going into the Open Championship. I believe I have increased that lead. At least I hope I've increased that lead. So make sure you're following them over on social media and subscribe to that article. Then lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. Anything that you want to conclude about the Open Championship and all of that. And then moving forward to the 3M, have you looked at the odds board? Have you looked at the pricing? Who's your early favorite? How do you think the course is going to play? So feel free to jump into chat. If you're not able to catch the show live, make sure you jump into the comments and put your thoughts and opinions in there. I'll always get to those as well. But let's get into it. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2025 3M Open. And we are going to start, as we always do on a Monday night, with our first look at the forecast. This is the extended forecast look for Blaine, Minnesota. It looks like they're going to get some rain early on this week. Today, lots of wind tomorrow, and even into early Wednesday. Hey, John, thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Hope you had a very good Open Championship and Barracuda if you played. I don't know if you saw last night's show, but the Open was very, very good for me. And I hit the outright at the Barracuda, so one of my best weeks in a long, long time, which makes 3 weeks in a row here on Calls that have been very, very profitable. Cashed 70% of my lineups for the Open Championship. One lineup 30x'd its money. I mean, I had Scheffler and Fitz and Harris English. Just, great plays up and down my lineups. So I hope you shared in the success. If not, we'll try to get you back on the winning ways for the 3M this week. Very much appreciated that you jump into chat. But we're taking a look here at the forecast for Blaine, Minnesota. Happy for you. I should have tailed you a lot more. I mean, it happens, like I said, especially last night. I mean, I've had three very, very good weeks in a row. I was, a little bit of tongue-in-cheek and joking, but it is the nature of the business that I hope people have shared in the success, because the rails will fall off eventually. I'm going to try and delay that as much as possible, but it's just the nature of the beast and the game that we play, that there is going to be bad weeks to come, and we're going to try and avoid those as much as possible. But hopefully you had at least some modicum of success for the Open. Like I said, the Open was great, cashing 70% of the lineups, and just the chef's kiss, the cherry on top, hitting Ryan Gerard at the Barracuda just made for a fantastic week. So we're going to try and keep the momentum for the 3M, the penultimate regular season event on the PGA Tour. As we get into actual tournament forecast, looks like a lot of rain Wednesday night into Thursday morning. A little bit of wind Thursday morning with that rain, and really no wind until Sunday. Now, I'll skip ahead here just a little bit. We'll go back to the forecast, but I had mentioned last night how I was remembering 2023 Lee Hodges' win when he blitzed the field at 24 under, and that was kind of an outlier. Last year the winner got to 17. In fact, in 2022 it was pretty darn difficult considering how much wind they had. Winning score at 15. So as of right now, it doesn't look like the wind is going to be a major factor around Blaine, Minnesota. Then again, if this forecast gets pushed, say from Wednesday morning to Wednesday night or even Thursday morning, depends on how much rain they get as well. We'll stay on top of the forecast and we'll update this the first thing Wednesday evening. But as of right now, I don't see a whole lot of wind in the forecast. I don't think it's going to affect tournament play, seemingly, with the exception of maybe Sunday afternoon, maybe a little bit Thursday morning, depending on how much rain and stuff they get. But it does look like they're going to get rain consistently now until the start of the tournament. So there's a look at the forecast. We need to be mindful of this moving forward this week, so make sure whatever weather forecasting site or app or anything of that nature that you use, make sure that you are constantly checking that this week to see how much rain they get and see if any potential wave advantage develops. But it's just too far out to see that this early on in the week. So with that, we'll move to Fantasy National and take a look at some of the players in the field this week. There have been more field changes. The Monday qualifiers were listed over on social media. The names that I'm remembering: Steven Stallings, Yi Sao. Don't know if they've been put in here. Yeah, so Steven Stallings, Josh Radcliffe, Michael Fairstein, and Yi Sao are your 4 Monday qualifiers. Anybody who is starred here is an alternate or has withdrawn. But there have been 2 more field changes today. Joining Tim Whiting and Thomas Dietrich, Brian Campbell, and Ryan Gerard, Rakuyo Hoshino has decided not to play this week, and Stefan Jaeger also withdrew earlier today from the 3M. Hey, good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. It was quite fun going back and forth with Adam Scott and how he's not your favorite player. Quite tongue-in-cheek there. But it's good to see you in chat this evening. Very, very much appreciated. Hopefully you've gotten some good research in. Maybe you put in some wagers for the 3M. Curious to hear what you're thinking early on this week. You just missed the weather forecast. So if you want to see that, check out the first 5 or so minutes after the show this evening. Not yet, will tonight. Yep. I actually put in some wagers last night on the 3M. I was up late. The win odds were at least out, not the top 10s or 20s or anything, but just the flat win wager. So put in some names at some numbers I liked. But I was just talking about looking like Burns and Grazerman for me. We might see those players throughout the week on my betting cards and in a lot of my lineups. I like where your head's at there, Darnell. That's all I'll say. Early on this week, but I like your line of thinking there. Just going over the 2 field changes that happened today. Of course, you were here last night, so Tim Whiting and Brian Campbell, Thomas Dietrich, Ryan Gerard, they had already withdrawn. Today, Rikuya Hoshino and Stefan Jaeger also withdrew. So any player that starred is a withdrawal. Just in case, one lineup for me at least, Adam Scott isn't here. Very good. Just in case that forecast either changes or that wind really does pick up, particularly early Thursday, we'll take a quick look at some moderate and windy performance for the players in the field this week. So in moderate and windy conditions, going back to the beginning of last year, some players have quite a few rounds, some players don't. Just trying to make sure we get enough rounds to make it statistically significant. Your top players in terms of total performance in moderate and windy conditions: Mav McNeely, Sung Jae, Sam Burns, Siwoo, Tony Finau, Alex Smalley, Alex Noren. Your favorite player, Darnell, Adam Scott, Taylor Pendrith, and Mac Meisner. Again, I am skipping Ryan Gerard. He has withdrawn. The only other kind of high-level overview that I want to take here. Whoops, I didn't mean to click Jack Nicklaus. This is definitely not a Jack Nicklaus design. This is an Arnold Palmer design. Meant to uncheck the windy. We are going to take a look at long course performance. This is over 7,400 yards, and it could play fairly long considering all the rain that's in the forecast. Having said that, they haven't set up the course to be over 7,400 yards since 2020. So it's been on the higher end of this medium range seemingly every year. So this might not be the most appropriate filter, but with that rain, looks like the course could be soft. I'm just going with it for now. We'll see how we feel come Wednesday with the mixed condition model. But your top performers on long courses, though that's defined as over 7,400 yards in Fantasy National, your top performers: Alex Noren, Taylor Pendrith, Sung Jae, Sam Stevens, Max Homa, Siwoo, Keith Mitchell, Doug Gim, Ben On, and Will Gordon. Again, skipping Ryan Gerard. He has withdrawn. All right, we're going to clear the filters here. Get ready for our deep statistical dive into TPC Twin Cities. So with that, good segue, we'll head over to Microsoft Excel. Take a look at the statistics that generally play well for the players that finish in the top 30 year over year at the 3M. Adam Scott is here. How's he doing? I mentioned this last night. He is in the field. He's listed in the field. That's why I keep giving you some grief, Darnell. He's gonna win, ain't he? I don't like Adam Scott this week. At least my first thought process isn't to like Adam Scott this week. But we both know, Darnell, that's how this game works. That we are on a player one week, he completely implodes, so we get off of him, and then the next week he wins. That's generally how things work. You and I both know that. That's happened to me several times. Although Adam Scott first round leader, the tee times aren't out, anything like that. But I wasn't too keen on Adam Scott. My first thought process. Then to miss the cut. What's the wager? I don't know. I don't know if he'll miss the cut because this is a very, very weak field. But I'm certainly not as high on him as I was last week at the Open. let's dig into some data here for TBC Twin Cities. You see that just like most every course, dominated with approach and putting. The approach has been pretty inconsistent. We've got 3 pretty high important years, and then 2 years, especially one here that's an extremely low sample here. If we take a look at against full field averages, you see ball striking, and we mentioned this a lot last night, how ball striking graphically was such a major factor for the players that top 10, top 5. We saw this in the course breakdown in Fantasy National. And you think about your winners, Tony Finau, even Lee Hodges, pretty darn good iron player, not necessarily off the tee, but pretty good, darn good iron player. Our defending champion, who is... the name's escaping me now, but like Cameron Champ winning in 2021. Big off the tee guy. Now it's bothering me. Now I got to go back to Fantasy National. Who is our defending champion? That is really, really irritating me. I should know this, and I'm just blanking on it. Johnny Vegas. Again, another one of these guys that is known for ball striking, for especially his off the tee game. So big emphasis in ball striking, putting. Yeah, players are going to be putting well, but you see just how little around the green has mattered. Having said that, it has gained some importance the past couple of years, so it is something to note, because the first 3 years, or at least the first 3 years of the data set that I collect, I only go back 5 years, didn't really matter all that much. This is an extremely high outlier for putting, so if we remove that, putting becomes, much closer to full field course average as opposed to, something somewhat of an emphasis. So, again, lots of emphasis here in the ball striking. We see that off the tee, 33% more important. Approach, 24% more important. We might take a look at some bent putting. We'll absolutely take a look at some bent putting tonight, just for our research purposes. Not confident that we'll put putting into the mixed condition model. Something else that we'll cover in terms of at least former champions. See how they've done putting leading into the 3M. Take a look at fairways and greens. Despite the fact that our defending champion Johnny Vegas, known for being pretty long off the tee, Tony Finau, so especially Cameron Champ being long off the tee. Look at this distance. Distance isn't really that much of a factor here. And we see that coming over here for the players that have finished in the top 30. It's not the biggest deal. Now, maybe for your winners, it might be. But really, there's been 1 year that distance was a major factor. That was 2023. Funnily enough, that's the win Lee Hodges, who's the least distance inclined between like Vegas last year, Finau in 2022, Champ in 2021. Quite interesting to see that Lee Hodges is the one that, or Lee Hodges' win, at least, is the one that's the extreme outlier in distance. But traditionally, it's been the good drives gained. Much more so in the fairways, hitting greens, which these greens aren't necessarily that hard to hit. So I don't know how much emphasis I want to put into this per se. I'm more thinking good drives gained, because distance isn't that big of a factor. Driver is forced into these players' hands, and I want to see the guys who are straight with the driver, which makes a lot of sense why Johnny Vegas won last year and has had quite a bit of success here, because he's generally very, very good with the driver, long and generally straight. Tony Finau, long, generally straight, especially 2022 when he was pretty much in his prime, it's kind of fallen off since. But we're going to be taking a look at good drives gained, probably some fairways, to be honest, considering this is an extremely low outlier from Lee Hodges' year. You take that, that's like almost 50% more important. Yeah. We're going to be looking at more accuracy than distance, seemingly. Moving to scoring, despite the fact there are lots of gettable, or the 3 par 5s here are quite gettable, not a whole lot of eagles, to be honest with you. Just not a whole lot of eagles. We're going to be looking at birdies, seemingly. I don't know how I feel about this because they're both fairly equal in terms of, total number here, and they're both very inconsistent. Like Lee Hodges' year, bogeys were more important. Year before that, Tony Finau, it was clearly birdies. Cam Champ's year, it was clearly bogeys. 2020 was clearly birdies. So there isn't a lot of consistency there. But against the full field course average, it's actually more bogey avoidance. Which this course is pretty easy. I would lean thinking more birdies gained. I think a lot of this has to do with some pretty bad weather that has affected the tournament in years past. Particularly, a lot of wind. We'll take a look at both tonight, but I'm still leaning towards like birdies are better, considering how easy the course is in general. I don't know. What do you think? Put it in chat. Put it in the comments. What do you think? Am I making a mistake? Should it be bogey avoidance, or should we find the guys who can go low? Whoopsie. We'll now turn our attention to par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Last night, the par 3s were quite lacking in terms of importance. Par 5s always are going to be very important. That's where the majority of the strokes gained come. But look how important these par 4s have been, especially the past 3 years. I mean, they've just steadily risen in terms of importance, and all of it, basically, all of it, coming in the 400 to 450, especially last year. The 350 to 4 has decreased year over year fairly consistently, but that is just a lot of par 4 importance. Looking at par 3s, pretty consistent, not a whole lot here. They're just slightly under full field course average. Maybe the 175 to 200, but 0.7 out of all of these strokes. I mean, look at the par 4s. It's 5.3. Not really all that much. So I don't know how much weight we're going to look into par 3s. If anything, it'd be 5%. I don't think it's enough to just look at 175 to 2. So anything par 3s, we would probably go all par 3s, but just not very confident in it. Look, there's a lot in par 4s here. Just a ton. 23.5% more important than the average full field course. All 3 of these ranges really emphasized. Yeah. Just a lot in here. This range has steadily increased while this one has decreased. So I'm still thinking it's the 400 to 500 par 4s would be my assumption. Yes, there are 2 par 4s that measure over 500 yards on the scorecard, but they don't really add a whole lot in terms of total strokes gained. So we're looking at mostly this, seemingly, and those 2 that are over 500 are like 502 and 504, something to that effect. So they don't, you could easily see them playing under 500 yards when they move tees and pins around. And then very, very clearly, we're just looking at one range of par 5s here. Like 90 to 95% of the strokes gained in the par 5s come to this range. So we'll just be looking at that. Lastly, in terms of deep statistical dives into the 3M, not a whole lot in total procs. Having said that, that is the definition of an outlier. Like, if we remove that, total procs does become slightly more important. 9% or so. What is it with the outlier? Probably negative. Yeah, negative a bunch. So you can see how an outlier really affects data. That's why we try to find, statistical norms. Try not to base our stuff off of too many outliers. I would have thought that the 175 and 200 plus would have been the ranges we wanted to look at, considering how many approach shots come from that range. But look here. I mean, against full field course averages, they actually don't add a whole bunch. It's more the wedges. And I'm trying to determine what would cause that. 100 to 150. Is this more so like the scrambling, like players hitting it in the water? Because this is an outlier for both years right here. Like, it's just going to go up even higher, removing those outliers. So, I don't know. Not terribly confident in terms of 100 to 150. Again, like I said, I would have thought. In fact, I mean, this whole thing looks to be an outlier from Lee Hodges' win. If we remove all of that, yeah, gets a little bit better here. So, interesting. I'm still probably leaning here, but we'll take a look at total procs as well, because these greens are slightly larger than the PGA Tour average. So probably would be wise to take a look at total procs. But would be interested to hear your all's thoughts. Put it in the chat, put it in the comments. What do you think about the scoring? Are we looking at birdies or bogeys? What do you think about total, or what do you think about proximity? What proximity do you think plays best around TPC Twin Cities? So there's a look at the deep statistical dive into TPC Twin Cities the past 5 years. We'll come back to Fantasy National and now take a look at some of the players who have excelled at those particular metrics in the recency. We'll start with off the tee. Last night we took a look at off the tee long courses. Let's just take a look at off the tee in general. In your last 36 rounds, who has been best off the tee? So those players that are in the field this week: Rico Hoey, Kevin Yu, Chris Goddard, Nicholas Norgard, Michael Thorbjornsen, Luke List, Alex Smalley, Cam Champ, Kurt Kitayama, and Jesper Svensson. Do note that the Open is in Fantasy National, but we don't get the statistics, particularly the strokes gained. We do get some statistics from the Open, but we don't get any strokes gained data. At least Fantasy National doesn't. I know some places do. I'm just using Fantasy National. We do get, fairways and greens data. We get par 3s, 4s and 5s, etc. But we don't get any strokes gained. So there's your top 10 off the tee performers, in the last 36 rounds. We'll move to approach. Norlander, Akshay Bhatia, Lee Hodges, Joel Damon, Tom Hoagie, John Pack, Victor Peri, Sammy Valimaki, Jackson Suber, and Austin Eckroat. Really, no one stands out in terms of both off the tee and approach. If we go to ball striking in general, I wanted to try and get, I guess they have moved it to somewhere else. I was going to do something called strokes gained ball striking, which is a combination of off the tee and approach, which is probably going to be led by Rico Hoey, would be my guess. First and 18th. Kevin Yu, Chris Goddard, both would be up there. Kitayama has actually been very good lately in terms of ball striking. He had a decent Barracuda. But you look at the John Deere, was very solid. Rocket Mortgage was solid. It's always one thing that's holding Kitayama back. It's the putter. So yeah, there's your top off the tee and approach players. Last 36 rounds. We'll take a look at some bent putting. I'm only going to go back to 2023 here. But your top putters on bent greens in the field this week at TBC Twin Cities. Taylor Montgomery, who was an alternate but is now in the field thanks to, I believe he took Rikuya Hoshino's spot. So Montgomery is now in the field. Sam Burns, Justin Lauer, Mackenzie Hughes, Brant Snedeker, Eric Cole, Chesson Hadley, Aaron Baddeley, Kevin Kisner, and Adam Hadwin are your top 10 in terms of putting on bent greens. If you wanted to take it a step further, you're probably looking at fast. But I'm a little cautious about that because it was average last year every single round. So I don't know if that's a conscious decision of them wanting to slow the greens down, if it just happened to be that way. Not sure. I think this year will give us a good indication whether last year was just kind of a fluke or if that was something they're trying to do. Anyway, there's a look at your top strokes gained players in the three metrics that are going to be most important this week, particularly off the tee and approach. I don't even know if we're going to put putting in the final mixed condition model, but it's always good to just look at in case we have some bent specialists. But in any case, we're definitely going to want to look at a lot of off the tee and a lot of approach based on what we saw in Microsoft Excel. Moving to fairways, greens, driving, things of that nature. Whoops, I didn't mean to add that. Let's just keep it to here. We're definitely going to look at good drives and probably fairways, but if we look at fairways, generally speaking, good drives gained is just a good metric to look at because players are either hitting fairways or they're hitting the green from the rough. So that's why I like this good drives gained metric. It's just a good encapsulation of what I'm generally looking for. Your top good drives gained players last 36 rounds: Carson Young, Joel Damon, Andrew Putnam, Siwoo Kim, Doug Gim, Rico Hoey, Paul Peterson, Victor Puri, Zach Johnson, and Bryce Garnett. Having said that, most of these players that are up here in fairways, not necessarily known for their distance, but like Doug Gim, not a slouch distance-wise. He's not long, but he's not, like Paul Peterson short either. Rico Hoey's got some distance. Michael Thorbjornsen, pretty darn solid in terms of distance and hitting plenty of fairways. If we look at fairways, we're looking at like Griot, Hoey, David Ford. Gerard is withdrawn. Like Cameron Champ has been amazing, seemingly, with the driver lately. 33rd in fairways, which he's not generally known for. But look at this off the tee. And if he's been hitting fairways, that's probably one of the big reasons why. Yeah, I mean, he's been really solid hitting fairways lately since the Canadian Open. Just playing some amazing golf at the moment, particularly with the driver. Cam Champ, Luke List, Michael Thorbjornsen, all of these players, even this Isaiah Salinda, all these guys are hitting plenty of fairways with the driver, seemingly, considering where they are at in terms of distance. If we were to sort on distance, there's Thorbjornsen, there's Salinda. A little bit less in terms of Stephen Fisk hitting fairways, but I mean, still 64th in fairways gains, not terrible. First in greens. My goodness, what? Is he just not putting worth a damn? There's your answer. Not good short game around the green or putting. So, no wonder he ranks high for me and yet doesn't have a lot of good finishes, because he has not putt well, he has not been good around the green, but you see the ball striking has been fairly solid lately. So I'll be surprised if Stephen Fisk rises in my rankings. Just be aware of that. He's not very good with the short game. Keith Mitchell, solid. Luke List, solid. Cameron Champ, solid. Ricky Castillo, who played pretty well at at the Barracuda, Darnell. I know you were thinking about using Castillo, and I talked you out of him a little bit. He was okay at the Barracuda. Wasn't great. He made the cut to, I think probably like a inside of the top 30. So it wasn't terrible. Maybe he's got some things coming around for him. Anyway, there's a look at some of the driving statistics, and particularly where I'm at early on this week is good drives. Because, I just don't think distance helps, but everyone's going to be using driver, so I want to see who is accurate among them. Because not a lot of players are going to be using 3-woods and such off the tee. This place really emphasizes driver. Driving distance is quite a bit further here than the PGA Tour average, and it's generally easier to hit fairways here. So I want to see who is long and accurate. We'll move to scoring. We'll look at birdies are better and bogey avoidance. Not confident on either one right now. Your top birdies are better gained players recently: Sam Burns, Keith Mitchell, Jake Knapp, Matty Schmid, Batia, Hayden Springer, Nicholas Norgard, Thor Bjornsson, Danny Walker, Cam Champ, and Eric Van Rooyen. Of those players, like Cameron Champ, highlight him. 10th in birdies are better, 6th in bogey avoidance. Very solid. Jake Knapp, 3rd in birdies are better, 32nd in bogey avoidance. 32nd is not anything to sniff at. I mean, that's decent. Sami Valimaki would be very good. 15th BOB, 22nd bogey avoidance. There's your top birdies or better gained players. If we go the other way, top bogey avoiders: Putnam, Siwoo, Emiliano Grillo, Castillo, Ryo Itsatsune, Cam Champ, Smalley, Matt Wallace, Matt McNeely, Danny Willett. So from this end, players like Cam Champ, Alex Smalley's not bad. 37th and 6th. Wallace, 41st and 8th. McNeely, 35th and 9th. Goddard, 20th and 15th. Chandler Phillips, 30th and 19th. Valimaki again. Davis Riley, 21st and 23rd. Just solid in both. So keep an eye on those players for scoring, depending on which way we lean this week. We'll go to proximity. I am going to sort on total procs. I still think it's these two ranges, but in Microsoft Excel, it was these two ranges. So somebody like Joel Damon, first in total, very good with the long irons, and solid from the statistically significant, or what seems to be the statistically significant ranges. Batia, just solid in pretty much everything. Brian Campbell's withdrawn. Ventura, very good with the long irons. Maybe not so much with the metrics that seem to play the best around TBC Twin Cities. Again, I'm not terribly confident on that proximity angle. Somebody like Chris Kirk, 16, 33rd with the long irons, 21st and 39th with the wedges, really solid. Tom Hoagie, solid. Oh, I don't think he's had much success here. I don't think. 3M. He's had some. Top 20, top 5, sandwiched with 2 missed cuts. So quite volatile. Quite volatile, which is the name of it's the modus operandi, if you will, of TBC Twin Cities, with all the water on the course. Tends to be pretty volatile. Other proximity players here: Grillo, solid. Davis Thompson, solid. Norlander, with the exception of 200 plus, Norlander's been very good at these various ranges. So here's a look at that. We're going to skip to par 4s. Mostly looking at the 400 to 500, these two ranges here. So Sam Burns, Goddard, Kevin Roy, Jake Knapp. McNeely, maybe to a lesser extent, second, 450 to 5, but just kind of good, 28th, 400 to 450. Griot, much the same. Keith Mitchell, solid in both. Gary Woodland, solid in both, 400, 450, 450 to 5. There's a few names there in terms of par 4s. And then lastly, we'll go par 5s. Again, all the strokes gained in par 5s come from 550 to 600. Grazerman, Davis Riley, Wyndham Clark, Danny Walker, Sungjae, Jespers Vincent, Sam Stevens, Siwoo, Cameron Champ, and Adam Scott. So there he is. He's still haunting you, Darnell. Adam Scott, 10th in par 5s. All right. That is a look at some very deep statistical dives into TBC Twin Cities and the players that at least recently have been pretty good at the metrics we think are going to play well at the 3M. We'll go back to Microsoft Excel and let's take a look at the players who have played the 3M, what they've done well and in these various metrics. So you see Grazerman, he's only played TBC Twin Cities once, but he did finish second. Homa finished third. Cameron Champ, winner in 2021, he's played it 3 times. He's averaged a 10th place finish. Very strong. Tony Finau has played it all 5 years. I only go back 5 years, just saying. But he's played it all 5 years, and he's averaged a 10th place finish. So he's been very, very good doing Tony Finau things, except making putts. Not very Tony Finau-like. Same with Cam Champ. So let's take a look and sort on some of these various metrics that we know are going to be extremely important and see who has been the best around TBC Twin Cities on those. So, sorry, let me do this. We'll sort, and we're going to start on who's been the best off the tee. So, your best performers at specifically TBC Twin Cities past 5 years. Matty Schmid, been excellent off the tee, and look how much distance he's gaining. So he's just been ripping driver everywhere and been pretty darn good with it. Doug Gim been great off the tee. Sungjae, a little bit less in terms of success, but he's been great off the tee. Pendrith, Johnny Vegas, your defending champion. Sam Burns, 2 for 2. Griot, 4 for 5. Griot's just been great around here. Mitchell, Cam Champ. So there's some of your top off the tee players specifically at TBC Twin Cities. We'll take a look at approach. Your top approach players at TBC Twin Cities. Again, anybody highlighted here in orange is an alternate as of now. Kitayama, only one time, but he gained 7.5 that week. Smalley only one time, gained close to 7.5. Tony Finau, averaging, gaining 5 per tournament. That's exceptional. That's elite. So there's something about this course that he just loves from an irons perspective. Johnny Vegas has been very good in both ball striking categories. To be fair, Tony Finau has been too. Matty Schmid, Lee Hodges, winner 2 years ago, excellent in both ball striking categories. Let's see, David Skins, 2 for 2. He's doing it all in the irons, considering he's a little bit lackluster with the putter here and really losing off the tee. Norlander, 3 for 4. Cam Davis, 5 for 5 around here. Interesting to note. Tom Hoagie leaving a lot to be, or not necessarily leaving a lot. He is quite Jekyll and Hyde. He's had very good finishes and he's missed the cut. Doing it all with the ball striking per usual. So there's a look at some of your top approach players at TBC Twin Cities. We'll take a look at putting. Definitely don't want to ignore that. Your top putters at TBC Twin Cities. Grazeman, Taylor Moore. Look at that. Third in this field, Cameron Champ. Something about these greens, he just loves putting on them. Frankie Sapan. Norns 2 for 2. Average finish inside the top 10. Been putting really well. Aaron Baddeley, 5 for 5. So maybe a cheap option in some of your lineups. Maybe. There's Matty Schmidt again. Mackenzie Hughes doing Mackenzie Hughes things. A lot of around the green, a lot of putting, not necessarily with the irons. Snedeker 2 for 3. Eckroat 1 for 3. Putting very well, but not doing a whole lot else well. Adam Hadwin 2 for 4. Doing Adam Hadwin things, putting very well. Finau. Vajegas 2 for 2. So there's a look at some of your top putters around TBC Twin Cities. Let's do good drives. That's where I'm leaning right now. Top good drives gained players at TBC Twin Cities past 5 years. Matty Schmidt again. Matt Wallace. Ben Coles. Tony Finau again. Bryce Garnett 5 for 5. Again, maybe another name to consider in your lineups this week. Hadwin, Johnny Vegas, Ches Reavie 2 for 4. Interesting. Grillo, Gim, both 4 for 5. Good in these good drives gained scenarios. Lee Hodges, Hoagie, Patrick Rogers 4 for 4. Skipping the scoring. Let's do par 4s. Because I do want to leave us enough time to show you what I have in terms of research. I'm going to sort on all par 4s. Remember, we're mainly focused on these two. So a lot of these players have only played one time, but look, Cameron Davis has done very well on these par 4s here in multiple years. Alex Noren, Tony Finau, Mav McNeely, been pretty darn good at these par 4s around TBC Twin Cities. Cameron Champ, maybe a little bit less in that regard. He's really taking advantage of like shorter par 4s here. Probably driving them would be my guess. Sam Burns. You mentioned him early on this evening, Darnell. Burns has played these par 4s and the par 5s pretty well. So I don't hate your line of thinking there. Grillo's been solid as well. Pendrith, not so much. Coles. Yeah. So there's an idea in terms of par 4s. I'm going to sort on the best finish. And I'll show you some of the research. Or the research that led me to post what I did over on social media today. So the first thing we're going to do, like we always do, we're going to take a look at the winner matrix. The performance of these past champions at the 3M in the years leading up to their win. This tournament was started in 2019, so Matt Wolff wins the inaugural. Obviously, he doesn't have any course history. Michael Thompson did play the first one. He made the cut to a horrendous finish, but he did make the cut. Cameron Champ's a little bit of an outlier. Missed the cut the first year, didn't play it in 2020, and then wins. But I want you to notice something about the next three. Tony Finau has always played the 3M very well. There's just something about this course that he likes. Top 25, top 5, top 30, good but not great, and then wins. Lee Hodges, top 20, and then wins. Even Johnny Vegas, yes, he didn't play it for 2 years before winning, but he had a lot of success here. Runner-up in 2021, and then wins. So 4 of your past 5 champions have made the cut, or previously made the cut, the last time they played the 3M. Johnny Vegas, Hodges, Finau, and yeah, even Michael Thompson, even though he didn't have a great finish, he at least made the cut the year he last played it. It didn't have to be the prior year. Take a look at Vegas. Champ didn't play it the prior year. But your last 3 champions all had a top 20 at the 3M. So that was one of the first things I noticed, that course history does seem to be fairly strong around here, despite the fact that it's pretty volatile. So the guys that generally played it well continue to play it well for whatever reason. All right? So that's one of the first things I wanted you to be aware of. Next, let's take a look at some recent form from these past champions. Again, starting with Johnny Vegas last year. Johnny Vegas arrived in Minnesota with some pretty darn good form. 2 straight top 25s. 3 top 25s in his last, 5-6 events? So he arrived in pretty darn good form, especially ball striking. Lee Hodges. Yeah, he missed the cut at the Open, but let's take a look. Top 15 at the Scottish, top 25 at the RBC Canadian, and a top 15 at the Memorial. He had been playing pretty well. Look at his form, particularly off the tee. Irons maybe not so much, but off the tee, he was very strong coming into the 3M. Tony Finau wins the 3M and then wins, what was it? The Rocket? He wins back-to-back. But he was in stellar form 3 years ago. Top 15 the Travelers. Runner-up the RBC Canadian. Top 5 the Charles Schwab. I mean, even the Open he played well. Look at his in-form ball striking. Amazing. Cameron Champ even had a top 15 leading into the 3M. Look at his ball striking, because he was never known as an iron player. Off the tee will always be kind to Cameron Champ because of his massive length, his prodigious length off the tee. Never known as a ball striker, as a good iron player, but look, even at the John Deere, he was gaining strokes iron-wise the week before, or the time before he played the 3M. All of these past champions, all of them, had at least one top 20 in the prior 2 months. The one outlier is Matthew Wolff. He had just turned professional and then wins at the 3M. So he's the outlier. I didn't really include his year. But the past 5 champions, all of them have at least one top 20. Most of them have multiple top 20s. Or top 20. I think I said top 25s. So, extreme recent form, like last couple of months. I think in my sample size, I went back to the Charles Schwab. So that was at the end of May. Look for, excellent finishes, and ideally multiple times since the Charles Schwab of this year. Let's take a look at their most recent event. All of them have pretty much been gaining off the tee. Perhaps Lee Hodges didn't at the Open, but we don't get that data, so we don't know. But anything that we have gotten, they were gaining off the tee. Majority of them gained on approach as well. So again, the emphasis of in-form ball striking. Cannot stress that enough. Most of them have been positive in distance. I don't know how I feel about that, but you can't ignore that most of them were generally bigger hitters off the tee. Opportunities. They were giving themselves a lot of opportunities. Everyone except for Johnny Vegas last year had actually played par 3s well their most recent event. So I didn't include it, but it is interesting to note. So even though there's really only 3 or 4 criteria, depending on how you wanted to break it down, previous top 20 at the 3M made the cut the last time they played the 3M, had at least one top 25, preferably multiple top 25s within the past couple of months, and in-form ball striking. With those 3 or 4 criteria, I will tell you there are 10. 2 hands, 10 players that fit that criteria. I posted that over to social media earlier today. If you're interested in seeing who those 10 players are, it's over there. If you like what you see and what you read, consider giving me a follow over there, because every Monday I do post research regarding past champions and whatnot and patterns for the tournament of that week. So you don't want to miss out on that. But there's a look at the past champions and some of the patterns that they all share. That's what I have for you for a data dive show this evening. I'll bring us back to this page view that shows how players have done at the 3M in the past 5 years. That's going to be it for the show this evening. Thanks to John and Darnell for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. It's been 3 very, very profitable weeks in a row. We're going to try to make it 4 for the 3M. So thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you've made so far this week for the 3M, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the 3M. And until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.